70 years and barely won anything. Because, what do you call a win? What do you call victory? And a lot of them have been a massive, gigantic mess, whether it's Vietnam, whether it's Iraq, whether it's Afghanistan. So I can understand why people like Benny are like, we're done with this. What do you feel, General, before I go to Benny, what do you feel about that from a military point of view?
Well, first of all, we do what our nation tells us, unless it's illegal or moral. But what I would say is, let's not forget the second Gulf War, 99 senators on both sides of the aisle out of a Congress of 100 senators voted for the use of force in Iraq. Now, they were clutching pearls and wringing their hands about 2 years later when it didn't turn out the way we thought it was going to. And one can argue about why that happened, whether it's poor intelligence, poor tactics, whatever. But it's not just the Americans the Republicans that either want to start war or stop war. It's really both sides of the aisle. And I think both sides of the aisle will say, look, America is willing to fight a war that's an existential threat to the United States of America. But these optional wars, we shouldn't be rushing to war just because there's somebody pointing a gun at us or our allies. There ought to be a higher bar. The Brzezinski rules that we used to talk about before we start putting American sons and daughters into combat. And we seem to have lowered that bar ever since 1982 or 1983 when we valiantly parachuted into Grenada to stop that hotspot of red terrorism. But no, I just think that, look, anybody that says America should go to all wars or America should go to no wars is just being foolish. We just have to be more discriminate about the wars that we fight. We need to have a better conversation about going into war before we send the 82nd Airborne in.
Benny, I do think it's a really interesting.
Could not agree more.
Yeah, it's a really interesting debate, and it's interesting to hear the General talk that way because it's not a million miles really from what you were saying.
Yes, thank you, General. That was very sound.
Yeah, it was very interesting. I thought
very reasonable, very reasonable.
And also, Benny, Trump, Trump did not go to war or didn't start a new war during his tenure as president. I've talked to him about this. He just sees it as bad business. I mean, it's good business for the people that build all the munitions, but it's bad business for America PLC. Wars are incredibly expensive. And as Trump put it, well, what do we get out of all this at the end of the day? And the answer is often a bigger mess than you started. You look at the Iraq War, for example, out of that came ISIS, which caused merry hell around the world for years. So other than that and wrecking Iraq, I'm not quite sure what the purpose of that war was. It was revenge against a country which had nothing to do with 9/11, etc. So I don't want to go over each of the conflicts, but Trump definitely seems to be with you on this, right? And do you think that is becoming almost the mainstream now with Republicans?
The American people are with me, Piers, because the American people are grounded in reality. I have an article right here on my phone that I'm reading right now, just breaking news at time of recording, Piers, that says that Joe Biden has forgiven the loan of up to the tune of $10 billion that was given to Ukrainian armed forces. So this is just money that will be carried on the debts and the backs of our grandchildren's grandchildren forever for a Ukrainian war that somebody has yet to quite frankly explain why we are funding or fighting. And this is something that is catastrophic to the American mind when they can't afford groceries, when a mother is standing in line wondering how she will feed her children or how she will fill up her gas tank, or why there are so many massive potholes on her road with a house that she has to rent a single room in because she can't, God help her, afford a home. That's utterly out of reach and unfathomable in the current economy. And she's sitting here looking at Joe Biden forgiving the loans of Ukraine to go slaughter the flower of Russia and Ukraine, these young children that are fighting and dying in these trenches. And she's wondering, what the hell? I can't feed my kids. And Taylor Swift and Lizzo and Oprah and all these billionaires are out telling me this is great. This is good. No, it's not good. It's how you lose an entire country. And it's a horrible thing to do to the American people. And I'm telling you, Piers, because I have a man on the street show and I go and I talk to both sides. You can go to the far left Palestinian protests. You can go to the far right Israel and or all the way to the heart of MAGA. and they'll all say the same thing. And I ask them these questions, Piers, and I'm telling you, this has got to be a 90-10 issue in America. If any politician's listening, this is your 90-10 issue. Americans want money spent in America first, to improve the lives of Americans first. And we have big hearts, with the biggest hearts in the world, to help out those in need. But we are sick and tired of being sold out for endless wars, and you just listed many of them. For my generation, which is millennial, it's Iraq and Afghanistan. And how did we leave Afghanistan? With 13 body bags in an avoidable, chaotic, disastrous, nightmarish, suicidal mission that got us effing nothing, Piers. And we're sick of it.
Jake, your response to that?
America's not fighting this war. There's no American forces on the ground in Ukraine fighting this war for Ukraine. So to keep saying this is America's war, America should be fighting this war, American soldiers are not involved. Concerning all of the past wars that America has been involved in, we can't overlook the Cold War. Is the world better off today because of the collapse of the Soviet Union? Is the world better off today with the Kremlin and the Russians weakened? The 14 Soviet republics that broke away, some of them have gone through peaceful democratic revolutions. Look at the economic miracle of Eastern Europe and all these countries joining the EU, joining NATO. Do any of them want to return back to the Russian sphere of influence? What this war is about is, does Ukraine have the right of self-determination? And other people on this panel are saying no, because the Russians have nukes, because we don't want confrontation with Russia. If Russia wants to go into Kiev and install a puppet regime and basically absorb it back into their empire, like they've done with Belarus, they've got troops in Transnistria, they've got troops in Syria, they've got troops in Georgia. The pattern keeps repeating, and Putin's never going to stop. He's dictator for life. He could potentially live another 20 years. These wars are never going to end. When you look at the stuff they're teaching their kids in Russian schools, they're preparing them for war for the next 20 decades. Putin wants his empire back, and I'm going to continue arguing that is not in the best interest of America. A resurgent Soviet Russian empire dominating Central Asia, dominating the Caucasus, dominating Eastern Europe, committing acts of hybrid warfare all the time. The Russians, with impunity, are poisoning people, destroying underwater cables, conducting cyber attacks. When is America going to say is enough? We're not going to let Russia have their empire back. And it's pennies. The billions that we've sent in old equipment, we're spending the money here in the United States. Defense production is ramping up here to rebuild our industrial base, to keep the world safer. Peace through strength. That's the legacy of Ronald Reagan, and I don't know why I have to remind Republicans of what Ronald Reagan achieved, defeating the evil empire. And I don't understand the people on this panel who are saying, let Russia have it, let Russia obtain this population, these people, their resources, and then go to the next war.
Okay.
Poland, the Baltics.
นี่คือหุ่นยนต์ดูดฝุ่นรุ่นล่าสุดจาก